How Twilio obliterated traditional telecom infrastructure. Picture this. It's 2008, and if you wanted to add phone functionality to your business application, you had three options, all of them terrible. You could spend 6 months negotiating with Verizon or AT&T for a custom integration that would cost you hundreds of thousands of dollars up front. You could hire a team of telecom engineers who spoke in acronyms like PRI, SIP, and PSTN, then spend 2 years building your own phone system from scratch. Or you could simply give up on the idea entirely, like most companies did. The telecommunications industry had spent over a century building an impenetrable fortress of complexity, designed to keep outsiders out and monthly revenues flowing in. Then a 28-year-old University of Colorado dropout named Jeff Lawson had a radical idea. What if making a phone call could be as simple as visiting a website? What if you could add voice, SMS, and video to any application with just a few lines of code? The telecom giants laughed. They had $1.4 trillion in global infrastructure, armies of lobbyists, and regulatory moats deeper than the Grand Canyon. How could a startup with 7 employees possibly threaten an industry that connected every human on Earth? They were about to find out. Lawson wasn't trying to build another phone company. He was building something far more dangerous. While traditional telecoms were still thinking in terms of phone lines and switching equipment, Lawson envisioned communication as a service that could be consumed like electricity from the grid. His company, Twilio, launched with a developer API so simple that you could send your first text message with just 5 lines of code. No contracts with carrier sales reps, no expensive hardware installations, no 6-month integration projects. Just sign up online, get your API key, and start building. The moment Twilio's API went live, something unprecedented happened in telecom history. Developers could experiment with communication features for free. A college student could build a voice application in their dorm room that would have required a $1 million budget just months before. The first crack in the telecom fortress had appeared, and it was growing fast. The timing couldn't have been more perfect for disruption. The iPhone had just launched in 2007, creating an explosion of mobile app development. Cloud computing was emerging as Amazon Web Services proved you didn't need to own servers to run software at scale. Developers were hungry for simple, programmable interfaces to complex infrastructure. Meanwhile, the traditional telecom industry was stuck in a different era entirely. Verizon's enterprise sales cycle averaged 18 months from first contact to contract signature. AT&T's custom integration projects required dedicated project managers, specialized hardware, and maintenance contracts that locked customers in for years. Sprint charged $50,000 just for the initial consultation on enterprise communication solutions. These companies had optimized for maximum friction because friction meant higher margins and customer lock-in. They never imagined that someone would give away their core product for free and make money on usage instead. Twilio's business model was elegantly simple. They abstracted away all the complexity of global telecom infrastructure and charged developers pennies per API call. Send a text message for 0.75 cents. Make a voice call for 1.25 cents per minute. No setup fees, no monthly minimums, no long-term contracts. Behind the scenes, Twilio was building relationships with over 180 telecom carriers worldwide, negotiating bulk rates and handling all the technical integration nightmares that had previously terrorized enterprise IT departments. They turned the telecom industry's greatest strength, its complexity, into their competitive advantage. While Verizon needed armies of engineers to manage their network infrastructure, Twilio made that same infrastructure programmable through simple web APIs. Developers loved it. In 2009, just 1 year after launch, over 15,000 developers had signed up for Twilio accounts. By 2011, they were processing over 1 billion API calls per year. The network effects kicked in faster than anyone expected. As more developers built applications on Twilio, the platform became more valuable to everyone. Twilio could spread their infrastructure costs across thousands of customers instead of dozens, allowing them to offer better prices and more features. They launched Twilio Video, making it possible to add video conferencing to any application without understanding the complexities of WebRTC or media servers. They introduced programmable chat, letting developers build messaging features that would have required teams of back-end engineers. Each new product made traditional telecom solutions look more expensive and outdated by comparison. The traditional carriers found themselves in an impossible position. They couldn't match Twilio's prices without cannibalizing their high-margin enterprise contracts, but they also couldn't ignore the growing threat. Verizon's average enterprise communication deal was worth $2.3 million over 3 years. Twilio customers might start by spending just $50 per month, but they could scale to millions in monthly usage without ever talking to a salesperson. The COVID-19 pandemic became Twilio's rocket fuel. As the world went remote overnight, every company suddenly needed communication features built into their applications. Telemedicine platforms needed video calling, e-commerce sites needed SMS notifications, remote work tools needed voice integration. Traditional telecom companies were completely unprepared for this surge in demand. Their sales teams couldn't meet with customers in person. Their installation crews couldn't deploy hardware. Their support centers were overwhelmed. Meanwhile, Twilio customers could implement new communication features in days instead of months. Healthcare startup Doxy.me scaled from 500 daily video sessions to over 100,000 using Twilio Video without a single phone call to customer support. Food delivery company DoorDash processed over 2 billion SMS notifications through Twilio in 2020, coordinating drivers and customers in real time. The pandemic proved that cloud-based communication wasn't just cheaper than traditional telecom. It was more reliable, more scalable, and infinitely more flexible. By 2021, the numbers told the story of complete industry transformation. Twilio was processing over 3.5 trillion API calls annually, more communication events than most traditional carriers handled through their entire networks. The company's revenue had grown from $0 to $2.8 billion in just 13 years, while telecom giants like Verizon saw their enterprise communication revenues decline year over year. Over 290,000 businesses were building on Twilio's platform, from startups to Fortune 500 companies. Uber used Twilio to anonymize phone calls between riders and drivers, processing over 5 billion voice connections annually. Airbnb used Twilio SMS to send booking confirmations in 220 countries and territories. Netflix used Twilio Voice for customer support callbacks. These weren't just customers, they were proof points that Twilio's infrastructure could handle any scale or complexity that traditional telecoms could offer. The traditional telecom industry's response was too little, too late. Verizon launched their own API platform in 2019, 11 years after Twilio. AT&T introduced developer tools in 2020, but required customers to go through enterprise sales channels. T-Mobile acquired communication API company Layer in 2021, paying $125 million for technology that Twilio had been offering since 2008. The carriers had every advantage: deeper pockets, established customer relationships, their own network infrastructure, and regulatory protection, but they couldn't overcome their own organizational inertia. Their entire business model was built on complexity and long-term contracts. They couldn't suddenly embrace simplicity and self-service without destroying their existing profit margins. Verizon's enterprise communication division still required customers to sign minimum 3-year contracts worth at least $100,000 annually. Meanwhile, college students were building communication apps on Twilio with nothing more than a credit card and a laptop. The infrastructure implications were staggering. Traditional telecom companies had invested hundreds of billions in physical infrastructure: cell towers, fiber optic cables, switching centers, and data centers. This infrastructure was their moat, the thing that made competition impossible for decades. Twilio proved that you didn't need to own the infrastructure to control it. By 2022, Twilio was one of the largest customers of every major telecom carrier, purchasing wholesale capacity and reselling it through APIs. They were essentially turning the carriers into their own suppliers. AT&T found themselves in the bizarre position of competing with Twilio for enterprise customers, while simultaneously providing the network infrastructure that powered Twilio's services. The power dynamic had completely flipped. Carriers went from being gatekeepers to being commodity suppliers in their own industry. Today, the transformation is complete. No enterprise software company builds their own phone system anymore. They integrate with Twilio or one of their API-first competitors like SendGrid, Plivo, or MessageBird. Traditional telecom is now a legacy industry, maintained for existing customers, but irrelevant for new innovation. When Facebook built WhatsApp calling, when Slack added voice features, when Zoom scaled to support 300 million daily video participants, they all used cloud communication APIs, not traditional telecom infrastructure. The $50 billion enterprise communication market that Verizon, AT&T, and others had dominated for decades has been completely reimagined around developer-first, API-driven platforms. Twilio's market capitalization peaked at over $70 billion in 2021, larger than traditional telecom companies with 10 times their revenue. They didn't just disrupt the telecom industry, they made it irrelevant. Every phone call, text message, and video chat is now just another API call, as programmable and scalable as any other cloud service. The fortress that took a century to build was demolished by 7 lines of code, proving that in the digital age, the simplest solution doesn't just win, it obliterates everything that came before.